President Biden is confident that his Build Back Better spending spree is going to sail right through Congress. But Democratic Senator Joe Manchin says, not so fast, my friend. And a leaked memo shows that the FBI has deployed its anti-terrorism unit to track complaining parents. In a few minutes, we'll talk with attorney Victory News contributor John Graves about these and some other headlines. But first, let's go to Mike Garofalo. He has the top stories. Mike?
Greg, with the announcement of a verdict in the Kyle Rittenhouse trial expected soon, the liberal media continues to stoke violence in Kenosha, Wisconsin. As day one of jury deliberations ended Tuesday, the city of Kenosha was on edge. The uptown neighborhood, which was devastated by last summer's riots and burnings, is a ghost town. Currently, 500 National Guardsmen are at the ready, just outside the city in case they are needed. Meanwhile, Judge Bruce Schroeder, who has been presiding over the Rittenhouse trial, has been receiving threatening emails, faxes, and other messages, according to a report from the Daily Mail. Some of the threats are aimed at the judge's family members, while other messages include accusations of racism and demands the judge withdraw from the case. And President Biden is projecting optimism about his $1.75 trillion spending package passing within a week. On a trip to New Hampshire to tout his now signed infrastructure bill, the president glossed over concerns from moderate Democrats who demanded a review of actual costs by the Congressional Budget Office. Biden has said the Build Back Better plan isn't going to cost anything, and it won't hurt the middle class because of offsets and tax increases on the wealthy, a theme he repeated in New Hampshire.
No one earning in America less than $400,000 will pay a single solitary extra penny in federal taxes. I wouldn't even let the bipartisan commission include gas tax in this bill, because that would mean working folks would be paying more money.
Montana Senator Steve Daines says the way to bring American gas and energy costs down is to stop our dependence on foreign sources. Daines says the United States shouldn't be relying on adversaries such as Russia to be America's second largest oil provider for the United States.
It's not being talked about enough, too, is the chilling effect this anti-American energy philosophy is having on the capital markets as well to continue to invest long-term in oil, natural gas, in coal production. And this is all part of the equation and the economics here because of the policies of this administration.
On Tuesday, the Republican introduced legislation to boost domestic energy production. Daines wants domestically produced energy so the nation can avoid a European-style energy crisis.
Europe is the movie trailer for the United States if we continue down the path of destroying traditional made-in-America energy.
As forecasters predict a colder than normal winter, energy analysts say Americans need to prepare for double-digit increases on cost of heating oil and propane, and electricity costs are expected to rise 6%. Tim, back to you.
Okay, Mike, a high school athlete in New Hampshire was suspended from playing on his school's football team after texting that there are only two genders to another student. The freshman at Exeter High School was given a one-game suspension for his biological observation on gender. The Portsmouth Herald newspaper reports that a legal group named Cornerstone Action filed a lawsuit last week on behalf of the student, claiming his belief in male and female genders is based on his Catholic faith. The suit also claims Exeter's non-binary gender and pronoun rules infringe on his First Amendment rights. Apparently, the student was riding on a school bus speaking to a friend about genders. A girl overheard and interrupted him, telling him that there were more than two genders. He replied, there were not. The debate continued later between the two by text, which the girl showed to administrators. Now, we hope the court supports this young man's right to free speech and religious freedom. Greg?
Well, that girl has a future at the FBI. A leaked FBI memo shows that despite Attorney General Merrick Garland's testifying that parents who voiced their displeasure with local school boards wouldn't be targeted, the FBI is using its counterterrorism unit to tag and track parents protesting critical race theory, pornographic literature, and other controversial school practices. According to the memo, the Counterterrorism and Criminal Divisions created a threat tag, its EDU officials, to track instances of related threats.
As we speak, at this moment, the FBI is, not maybe, is treating parents as terrorist threats. And the Attorney General came in front of the committee and said just the opposite. And you just played the clip. He says, I cannot imagine any circumstance where we treat parents or we give them the label of domestic terrorists. But in fact, the day before, as you pointed out, the day before, an email gets sent out to agents across this country saying just the opposite.
On Tuesday, Congressman Jim Jordan sent a letter directly to Garland asking why his actions were different than his testimony under oath. I want to bring in attorney, Victory News contributor John Graves. John, how big of a deal is it that the FBI is tracking parents as domestic terrorists?
I'd say it's a level 10 crisis deal, Greg. When the FBI refuses to do the right thing on the Russian gate, they're tracking people who go to the president's speech on January 6th, and now they're calling domestic terrorists, and they're tracking parents who stand against what? Critical race theory that teaches racism, that all whites are evil and racist, and pornographic material. They want to protect that kind of nonsense and that kind of evil in the culture, and the FBI is now being weaponized by the radical left. And so people need to stand up against it, expose it, and not be afraid of it.
Okay, so that little guy in the football team that sent that text and message, will the Cornerstone Action legal group, you think, be able to clear this high school student in New Hampshire, his name and his record?
You know, I hope so. Here's the problem. All he did was speak science and biblical truth. We have a Y chromosome or an X chromosome. God created two genders. Science verifies there's only two genders. And now we've gone insane in this country, or a segment of this country has gone insane and says, well, I just want to have a subjective belief. Greg, I filled out my insurance. What if I said I want to identify as a 19-year-old female? They have a much lower insurance rate. You're not allowed to do that, but now all of a sudden they're attacking gender, which is really, in essence, at the root, attacking God. And it's insanity. Even some of the far left feminists are starting to fight against this because there's no way to protect girls and women if there's no longer a gender.
I think you just tapped into something right there. There are a few things that you cannot change, that God decided for us that we don't change. One is you don't pick your parents, and you don't choose your race, and you don't choose your gender. And to say any of those is wrong, and to say that God got it wrong. And all three of those are the things that are being attacked in America. It's very interesting.
That's right. And they're at the beginning. They're at the beginning. They really are, Greg. And we have to stand up against this. I applaud this young kid for fighting or being willing to let somebody else fight his fight for him. But to me, he's just speaking the truth. He's speaking scientific truth. It's not political correct now with the far left doctrine. They've got to have a victim. They've got to have a new deception. And they do it with the vaccines. They do it with gender. They're doing it with all these things. They just want to redefine the world. And you can't have it both ways, Greg.
Right. Okay, the Rittenhouse, the jury has it now. Will it make a difference if they return a verdict today, or will it matter the longer this goes forward?
I don't think it'll matter the longer it goes forward, other than like Mike said, the far left media is trying to gin up a big racial claim. It's a white man who defends himself. They're trying to help people and protect their property against white men, three of which tried to kill him, hit him with a skateboard, grabbed his weapon, were threatening other people. And literally, it's a classic case. My concern is the jury sees the crowds and the threats of, they're going to burn down more buildings or police stations. We better convict this person who didn't actually do anything other than self-defense. And so they're making it about racism, and it's a white man defending himself against white men.
All three of those white men you described had substantial criminal records. Do you believe Senators Manchin and Sinema, will they be able to hold out on the party pressure on the BBBP?
That's a great question, Greg. That one's not as clear. Yeah, Build Back Bankrupt Biden plan. I think they probably will, because things aren't looking good for them right now, and they at least are honest about inflation, honest about oil and gas. I think Manchin's got the best chance to hold, unless the left can somehow get those, or the Democrat Party can get them to fold. I don't think if it comes out of the House, if it even gets there, which it probably will, I don't think it gets past the Senate, Greg.
And we've given you their numbers before. We encourage you to reach out to the senators and tell them you support them and you thank them. John Graves, be back to you in just a moment. Mike, over to you.
A small city in Coal State, Wyoming, will host a Bill Gates-backed experimental nuclear power project. Bellevue, Washington-based TerraPower will build its Natrium plant in Kemmerer, a city of 2,600. The nuclear plant could provide power to up to 250,000 homes and will replace a coal-fired one set to close in 2025. And there are more reasons than just domestic power to jump on board the nuclear power bandwagon.
China and Russia have been moving forward faster than the U.S. on new nuclear. They have advanced nuclear projects. They're building dozens of new builds. They're taking these new builds to entirely new countries as a way to kind of project their influence. So the U.S. government's concerned about this, and that's one of the reasons for the very large grant. They're trying to help TerraPower and U.S. utilities kind of get over this speed bump and get back into new nuclear plants, again, with an advanced technology.
The announcement came just days after U.S. officials pledged to continue working to limit greenhouse gas emissions. Greg, back to you.
Okay, Dr. Fauci on Sunday told CBS Sunday Morning senior contributor Ted Koppel that there's a misplaced perception about people's rights superseding societal safety. Dr. Anthony Fauci took his campaign for never-ending COVID mandates and restrictions to CBS Sunday Morning over the weekend. He spoke with news veteran Ted Koppel, and he spoke of his good plan to slow the infection and its spread and believed everyone accepted it. But he said President Trump had his priorities wrong.
The next day, the president's saying free Michigan, free Virginia. I didn't quite understand what the purpose of that was, except to put this misplaced perception about people's individual right to make a decision that supersedes the societal safety.
So, Dr. Anthony Fauci decided he would have to contradict President Trump and the constitutional freedoms of Americans like you. And now with Dr. Fauci facing the fact that even the National Institute of Health is admitting to gain-of-function research funding at the Wuhan with the virus that he continues to deny under oath, Fauci now seems to be using the national media to try to rebuild his credibility and retain his position of power. Perhaps he holds a misplaced perception about his individual right to make the decisions for all of Americans that supersedes science and truth. Tim?
Okay, Greg. Lawsuits challenging the vaccine mandate for workplaces will be consolidated and heard in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals in Cincinnati. The ruling came down from a federal judicial panel on Tuesday. The decision puts together 34 lawsuits that seek to overturn the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's November 5th order for businesses with 100 or more workers. The mandate, which is set to take effect on January 4th, has come under scrutiny from religious and secular employers. As written, the rules mandate either proof of vaccination for each worker or mandatory masking and weekly testing of those without the jab. According to reports, 20 of the 27 justices on the Sixth Circuit of Appeals have been appointed by Republican presidents. Let's bring in Victory News contributor John Graves again. Hey, John, even though a majority of those judges on that Sixth Circuit are Republican appointees, do you think this case has a chance?
I do, Tim, think it has a chance, but you point out who they're appointed by because that really does matter. Elections have consequences, especially at the presidential level and the Senate, because that's who does the federal judiciary. The Fifth Circuit has already stopped this, Tim. Kelly Shackelford with First Liberty's got a lawsuit with 36 Navy SEALs, not just 100 secular employees, but also the federal government. I think people are finally standing up and fighting against this, and I think there is a chance. I really do. And I can get into I don't know how much you want to unpack that, but there should be a legal chance, but there's also a scientific backing it up.
Oh, science. There you go. I want to talk about Dr. Fauci real quick. He has a problem with his former boss and Americans who want to exercise individual freedoms in regards to the vaccine. In fact, saying that people's individual rights don't supersede societal safety. Your thoughts, sir, as a constitutional attorney?
He's totally wrong, spiritually and constitutionally, but I'm glad he finally admitted what he's been doing. It's kind of like the Virginia governor race. The far left doesn't want parents involved in education, but they rarely come out and just admit that's what it is. So I'm glad he did this, because the more they admit, we don't believe in your individual rights. We don't believe in your constitutional rights. We don't even believe in the Constitution. We want to take all that away because we want to be in control. And they promised us, President Biden promised us, this was an effective vaccine, which means you can't get it and you can't spread it. It's a lie. You can get it and you can spread it. It's safe. It's a lie. More people are having side effects from that, I personally know, than people with the flu.
Yeah, and there's people in Australia that are suffering greatly under lockdowns. Singapore going through the same thing. Matter of fact, Singapore, though, to their credit, recognizes natural immunity. All right, a new nuclear power plant in Wyoming backed by Bill Gates. I thought that's interesting. Is this a way to split between the climate alarmists and the traditional energy users?
I don't know if it is. I mean, nuclear is like natural gas and coal and other things. It's actually more clean than coal, but it's very effective. And so it's been puzzling why they won't produce our own energy with nuclear. It's kind of strange Bill Gates is doing it. Not sure why he's doing it in Wyoming. So I'm not sure what to make of that. Maybe that's what he's trying to do. But clearly we have a problem under the present administration that the Senate Democrat is saying we got to tap the reserves, the emergency reserves, which are usually for crisis and war, because of our policies to shut down the Keystone Pipeline. And now we're dependent on Russia and Saudi and the other Middle Eastern countries.
Right. It's a crisis they created, and now they want to try to fix it. It's like giving somebody $100,000 to go buy a car, and they only spend $50,000 to buy a car, and then they say, we saved you $50,000. They still spent $50,000 of your dollars.
Or it's like defunding the police and then being confused that crime is out of control and highest ever reported. It just goes together.
Good point. Okay, so when the president pushes us towards Russian and Venezuelan energy, he blocks American workers from providing U.S. oil. Is that not the real national security issue, John?
It is, and it's not just national security, it's terrible policy. You got to remember, as believers, a lot of times we don't love the people who are candidates for senator or the president. They're not running for pastor, they're running for leader, and we should look mostly to their policies. President Trump, if you didn't like his tweets a lot of times, look at his policy more than his personality. And the problem is, you start looking at these policies, if the election was reheld today, it would be a landslide in the opposite direction.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. John, we'll be back with you in just a moment. Let's go back to Mike Garofalo. Mike.
Republicans are so confident they will retake the House, they are already making plans on what abuses they will investigate once they return to power. According to the Washington Times, the GOP will look into 3 controversial issues. One is behind-the-scenes efforts by the Department of Justice and the White House to target outspoken parents at school board meetings. Another is the handling of the coronavirus pandemic and the government's overreach. The third is a relatively new artist who sells his work for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Of course, we're referring to the president's son, Hunter Biden, who has also been seen as many as the Biden family bagman with Ukraine business and other foreign entities. At last but certainly not least, Joe Biden's chief medical advisor and COVID power broker, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Greg, back to you.
All right, I want to bring John Graves in one last time. That last story is a little troubling to me. I don't want you to investigate things. I mean, do that on the spare time. Let's pass common sense legislation. Let's make a contract with American citizens and pass laws that stop this kind of stuff. John, your thoughts?
Yes, you're exactly right. And they need to add, I don't know why they didn't put that on the election integrity, voter integrity, because that's a big issue. I think what they're really saying, Greg, is, okay, you want to overreach and investigate people on our side when you're in power, we're going to do it. And part of why they need to investigate is to justify the legislation they want to pass, but also to educate the American people of the fraud and the hypocrisy and the evil that's been going on in this country. And within 12 months, when they take it over, I promise you, you're going to see a lot of that come out. But I agree with you. At the end of the day, we don't just want another investigation. What we want is meaningful policy for our nation.
That's exactly what we want. Do us a favor, John, and let's pray for our nation and for these leaders and these elections coming up.
I'll be happy to. God, I just pray, I'm just convicted in my spirit about Nehemiah that you called them when they were threatened, which is what's going on by the radical left, when they were harassed. They had to have a sword spiritually to fight in the heavenly realms in one hand, but they had their bricks and rebuilding the ruins, rebuilding the things that are wrong. Help us, God, be like Nehemiah. They worked with enthusiasm, in theos, in God. Help us be like that in the name of Jesus.